I should be live on all of the places. Okay. All right, guys. So those of you on Instagram Live will not be able to see the PowerPoint that I am using. So if that feels weird, if you're like, what's she talking about? What's she referring to? Then that's why. But here we go. I'm going to start recording. Okay. All right. I think we're all set. Okay. So I won't be able to see the chat as much when I am in presentation mode. So hopefully that's okay. And I will definitely come to the chat and talk and sorry guys. Okay, here we go. I will definitely come to the chat at the end and answer any questions, and we can have any discussion, and I'll try on Instagram to see any questions as they come through. I can't promise anything, but I'm super excited to be on here and be sharing about this. And first of all, thank you to Stevie and We Are Her for all the work that they're doing in the world. It is important work, and I am just honored and privileged to be here and to contribute in any way that I can. So yeah, this webinar is on trauma and body image with me, Clara Wisner of Revolutionary Lifestyle. There's another picture of me. So just to go through the agenda, this should be a little less than an hour, but I'm going to go through a little introduction of myself. I'm going to talk through some definitions, some statistics, some history. This is kind of depressing stuff, so I'm going to go through that a little quickly, but it's important that we see the severity of this body image kind of issue and just have some clear definitions and some statistics and history around it as well. Then we're going to talk about the correlation between body image issues, disordered eating, and trauma. And then we're going to talk about what it really means to you as someone who may have experienced trauma of some sort in your life, probably, if you're interested in this, or, also possibly disordered eating or body image issues as well. And then I'm going to go through some coaching nuggets, just some really good kind of seeds to plant in your mind to when you're thinking about the subject. And then we're going to go through the 4 top tools for holistic approach to healing body image issues related to trauma. And then we're going to talk about 5 steps to take right now to heal. And then I'll talk a little bit about resources for further study. So those of you who registered for the webinar via Zoom, I do have a handout that I'm going to have a bunch of kind of notes as well as extra resources, links, that kind of thing, the bibliography for this. So if you're registered for that, you will get that automatically. If you're not registered for it, if you're on Instagram Live or Facebook Live right now, just comment, get a hold of me in some way, and I'm happy to send that resource sheet to you any way you want. Okay, so who am I? So I thought we would start out with that because, who am I to be talking about this stuff? And so I thought I'd start out with my professional kind of bio, which is that I'm a nutritionist and a psychotherapist and a self-love guide. That's my self-proclaimed title. And so I originally started Revolutionary Lifestyle, my business, to help women through nutrition, specifically with hormones and that kind of stuff. But I quickly saw through my own journey of healing that I'll talk a little bit more about, that it wasn't, for me, it couldn't just be about the food. It had to be about healing the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical body. So in my practice now, Revolutionary Lifestyle, I work with women one-on-one, helping them to work through what I kind of call when they've been through a disordered eating program and maybe recovered, but they're only partially recovered, or they're on the spectrum of disordered eating and they're still just really struggling with their body image, or they're still struggling with their body image, or they're struggling with their just obsession with food. and feeling like they're just not loving themselves very, very well, then that's the kind of person that I help. And I also have online programs. I have an online program called Self-Love Mastery. I teach and educate about essential oils. I have a podcast called Love Rising Podcast. So I have a lot of different things, a lot of different resources, as well as my website, which has meditations, blog posts, that kind of thing. So that's my professional background. My personal background is a little bit more sorted. So I struggled with disordered eating from a very young age. And if you know me, if you follow me, you know that that's something that I talk about and am clear about and kind of talk about my healing journey. However, if you were to revert to go back further, I was actually at the age of 13, which is around when all of my disordered eating started. I was in a relationship with a man who was much older than me. I was a freshman in high school and he was a senior in high school. And it was my first kind of relationship, my first kind of, real relationship. And during that relationship, which lasted about a year, I was consistently sexually abused. And during that time, I didn't actually realize what was going on. And I think that's a huge part of, why We Are Her and sharing our stories is so important, is that I think there's so many people out there that don't realize, that they're not alone, that this isn't, that they don't have to put up with this, right? That this isn't something that's normal, which in my 13-year-old mind, that was something I thought was normal. It was my first experience with a relationship that I thought was love, right? And so I thought that love meant, having sex when you didn't want to, being forced in certain situations to have sex. I didn't necessarily think that it was okay. Of course, there's an innate part of us that thinks like, this isn't okay, I don't want this to happen. But it's that feeling of feeling like I'll give this up so that I can be loved, right? So that happened for that year, and I got out of that relationship. There was a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of isolation, a lot of feeling very, very out of control, and a lot of talk about my body in that relationship. So a lot of saying, pointing out things that were wrong with me, or pointing out things that were changing. Because I was 13 years old, my body was changing, right? And at the time, I had no idea what to think about that. And because there wasn't a lot talked about that in my family and household and in my friend groups, I didn't really know what was going on. And so it was, just a lot of inundated, unhealthy, toxic, and violent in some cases experiences around sex and love and my body and what that meant. So luckily I got out of that relationship, and I basically just put it away. I put it in a box. I didn't want to think about it. There was never any sort of legal things that happened. I never told anyone really. And I put it in a box and said, I got away from him. I'm not going to think about that anymore. I'm going to go on with my life, right? So what happened as I went on with my life was that I developed these disordered eating patterns. I developed a very severe self-loathing, self-hatred, I would say. And the way that kind of manifested was, drug and alcohol use, loads of unhealthy relationship patterns with other men, into my early adulthood. Drug and alcohol use, all these things kind of to numb myself, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but just putting it out there as, in the tradition of We Are Her, of sharing our stories. Like I said earlier today, this is not something I've ever told anyone publicly through my platform. So this is new to some people, to everyone actually. And so these are just pictures of me. This was me at my high school graduation. And then that's me drinking a beer, which was a huge part of how I numbed and how I coped for a long time. And then I will bring it up to the other picture in the presentation here where I'm in Africa. So through high school and undergrad, so 4 years of college, severe disordered eating issues, lots of unhealthy relationships, lots of drug use, lots of alcohol use, lots of really terrible self-talk and self-loathing. And I was definitely in a very unhealthy place, but I knew that I wanted to travel, and I knew that I wanted to help people. I wanted to do international development work. And so I entered the Peace Corps, and I was accepted, and I went to Africa. And when I was in Africa, I kind of think of it as all, it was super difficult. I was living in a mud hut in the village with no electricity, no running water. So you can imagine all the stressors when you have disordered eating patterns. The more stress you get, the more kind of severe your disordered eating patterns get. So my disordered eating patterns were getting more severe, and the negative self-talk and the unhealthy treatment of myself, really just like not treating myself well in any way, shape, or form, came to a head in Africa. And kind of what happened was there was a point at which I really decided to start just to figure out how to take care of myself. I was like, I can't keep going down this road. I really think of it as this kind of dark night of the soul. And obviously it happens slowly over time, but at the same time, it also happens just like that. There was a decision that I was going to take a different path. And that happened in Africa in this really hard time in my life. It was like these coping mechanisms can't work anymore. So what's going to happen? So I started on this journey of self-love and recognizing what was going on. And that's been a journey. And honestly, the sexual abuse part of it has not even come into play until this last year. That was still compartmentalized away. Not being able to look at it, not being able to process it until very, very recently. So for those of you who are in my same boat, like, we're in it together, and it's definitely something that, we can put away like that. But we can heal from it too. And so I've been healing through this disordered eating pattern for so long, but this trauma part has come up to the forefront to be healed. And that's my personal story. Okay. So what is trauma? What do I mean when I am defining trauma? So in general, trauma can be defined as a psychological, emotional response to an event or an experience that is deeply distressing or disturbing. That's the general definition of trauma. So it's a very person-specific and perspective-specific. This is really important because there is no need to compare your trauma to my trauma, to someone else's trauma, because it's psychological in nature. And what I mean by that is that you were not me at 13 experiencing this trauma, and I was not you at whatever age you experienced trauma, experiencing that trauma. So there's no way for us to compare because of all the incredible amount of variables going on, right? So trauma is something that could be something super simple. It could be someone standing up in front of the class and getting laughed at. That could create enough trauma to create issues in life. And so we really want to be sure when we go through this to know that if you feel like your trauma has caused you some body image issues, which there's an argument that just in society in general could create enough trauma to create body image issues in most women, then it's totally valid and it's totally okay. And that's totally correct for you. So don't in any way, shape, or form feel like your trauma can be compared to someone else's, or don't compare someone else's trauma to yours. So it's very person specific, very perspective specific. It just had to be a distressing situation. So these are the stats on some things. I'm not going to necessarily read them all. I'm going to go read through them and just know that this is a really big problem in the US. There's a lot of physical abuse still, specifically towards women and children as well. Sexual abuse stats are 1 in 4 women and 1 out of 6 men are sexually abused in their lifetime. 8 out of 10 rape cases, the victim knows the attacker. And then there's more stats here. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but the point is here that these are probably low. These are probably low because these are based off of cases that have been reported, unlike my story, which was never reported. And so I'm sure there's, much more of that. So it's a problem, right? And I do want to talk a little bit about emotional abuse as well. So emotional abuse would be things like gaslighting or just generally being vindictive or mean or saying mean things or judgmental things. That is also trauma. Emotional abuse also constitutes trauma and can definitely be something that creates a lot of residual effect. So what's an eating disorder? Any range of psychological disorders characterized by abnormal or disturbed eating habits. So this is something that I don't think people understand is that, when you think eating disorder, you think anorexia, bulimia, but it's actually a spectrum. So yes, there's the far spectrum of anorexia, for example, where one might have to be hospitalized. But there's also a huge spectrum of disordered eating that is not necessarily going to get hospitalized, but it's going to create a lot of quality of life issues, right? When you can't eat in a way that feeds your body, when you don't feel like safe around food, when food is an emotional trigger for you, that's something that is on the disordered eating spectrum. So we want to make sure to understand that it's not just bulimia or anorexia, it's on a spectrum of disordered eating. Range is the key word here. Yeah. So some eating disorder stats. These are very harrowing because they are going up in most countries. So as the rise of different media and TV shows and how the media does portray a certain type of beautiful, one type of beautiful, I think we're starting to see like eating disorders affect people in places that we haven't before. So eating disorders affect all races and ethnic groups, genetics, environmental factors, and personality traits all combine to create risk for an eating disorder. Eating disorders are on the rise globally, like I said, and you can kind of read through some of those. So what are body image issues? So body image, as a definition, refers to how people see themselves. Distorted body image or negative body image refers to an unrealistic view of how someone sees their body. So I think body dysmorphia is something that a lot of, especially teenage girls have, but it's not, it might not be as clearly understood. So it's body dysmorphic disorder is a distinct mental disorder in which a person is preoccupied with an imagined physical defect or a minor defect that often others can't see. So it's when you look in the mirror and you see only, some like a double chin or something, or you see, you see your thighs. I know when I was in this space, I was like constantly looking at my arms, like touching them, feeling them, touching my stomach, see how much like fat I could grab up from my stomach. Like these are all very body dysmorphic. Sorry, there's an Instagram live kind of conversation going, but it looks like it's all good. So that's body dysmorphic disorder when you're kind of very critical of a very specific part of your body, right? Or like your thighs or your tummy. This is something I see all the time in women is they hate their stomach. I hate my stomach. I hate my thighs. I hate my nose. These, like when we really single out a certain piece of our body or our face and really obsess over it, that's body dysmorphia. Yeah, preoccupation or obsession with your body parts. Component of self-confidence and self-esteem. So I think it's pretty obvious, but to know what we're talking about here is that, of course, if we have body image issues or negative body image or distorted body image, it's going to affect our self-confidence and our self-esteem, right? Okay, so body image statistics. 80% of American women don't like the way they look. I thought that was pretty crazy. 70% of normal weighted women want to be thinner. So this is something I see all the time. I'll have a client, I get their kind of health stats and that I see that they're of a normal weight. They are completely normal in the weight spectrum, but they want to lose 20 pounds. And I'll kind of ask them questions, like, well, you're in the normal weight range. Why do you think you need to lose 20 pounds? And that is, something that is super normal, or I guess it's super common, but it's not normal, right? Super common to want to lose weight, even when you're in that normal range. And then over 50% of Americans, so this is women and men, aren't happy with their current weight. Excuse me. 34% of American men are dissatisfied with their body. Over 80% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat. 53% of 13-year-old American girls are unhappy with their body, and that number grows to 78% by the time the girls reach 17. So there's something that happens in that age range of 13 to 17, which was absolutely part of my story, was exactly those ages where I was developing this disordered eating pattern that happens where people start to get unhappy with their bodies. And then by middle school, 40 to 70% of girls are dissatisfied with 2 or more parts of their bodies. So that's that dysmorphia thing, obsessing about certain parts. Okay, so this is just a flow chart that I thought was interesting. Basically, this isn't taking trauma into consideration. We'll get there. But societal beauty ideals create socio-cultural channels, which go out to the media, your family, your peers, everything you're surrounded by. And then we internalize these messages about what a beautiful person looks like, about what a thigh should look like, about what breasts should look like, what a stomach should look like. And we internalize these messages and we have body satisfaction or dissatisfaction, right? If those ideals don't match up to what those societal beauty ideals are. And that can lead to dieting, disordered eating, eating disorders. So this is where I want to kind of shift into, okay, that's the definition. Those are the stats, but your worth has nothing to do with your body. Your worth has nothing to do with your body. Okay. So the relationship between eating disorders and body image. Physical, sexual, or emotional abuse raises the risk of the survivor developing all kinds of mental, emotional, psychological issues, as we can imagine. In particular, it is noted in studies that those who experience PTSD are often at a higher risk for developing negative body image and or disordered eating patterns. So any trauma can create PTSD. Again, I want to come back to that. Don't compare trauma. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. It just means that something traumatic happened to us to the point where it changed our neural pathways to be more fear-based. So we're going to have this post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's been shown in the studies that PTSD can lead to disordered eating patterns. Research also shows higher trauma rates among women who struggle with eating disorders that include binging and purging than to eating disorders that do not. So binging, purging, bulimia, this type of disordered eating part of that spectrum tends to show up more often in trauma victims, higher trauma rates, because part of that is because it's that escape, right? So bulimia in particular has been connected to trauma as a means of self-protection, because the binge purge cycle of behaviors seem to reduce awareness of thoughts and emotions as a means of escape. So this is why there's also, that drug and alcohol addiction factor, like in my story, because it's a means of numbing and of coping and of escaping the body, right? So as a means to escape several of the emotions that may accompany traumatic experience, such as anger, guilt, need to cleanse oneself of the experience, refocus, stress, need for control, predictability, and need for personal space. So for me, this was like, oh my God, that made so much sense to me, because that's exactly what I was doing. I was trying to compartmentalize that, pack it away in a box, not think about it anymore, and move on, right? Move on with my life without processing. Okay, so why this connection, right? This is kind of what I've been talking about, is that it's a way to escape our body. When our body was the victim of something, or our minds were the victim of some sort of trauma or some sort of abuse, a lot of what we want to do is get out of our bodies, right? We don't want to be in our bodies anymore. So when we're subjected to trauma of any kind, our brain will try to assign meaning. This is important. This is what we do as humans. We try to assign meaning to things. We see patterns and we start to say that means this, and we need to put things in the sequential order, right? So a very common meaning that we assign, whether or not we're told this, in some cases we might be, is that we deserved the abuse because of something we've done. And especially when we were a child and this abuse was happening, we can get very almost, it's to the root of us, feels that there is something wrong with us, right? Like, I did something wrong, I deserve this. Body shame is thought to be a result of sexual abuse in particular, which can lead to body dysmorphia as well as disordered eating patterns. So when there's sexual abuse in particular, there is a shame that comes with that, right? And I'm not saying that's deserved or that's what is supposed to happen. I'm saying that is what happens with a lot of people. I was very ashamed of my body. I can definitely make this connect the dots right here. There was a shame all of a sudden of like something wrong with me. I did something to deserve this. And then of course the voice, right, of my abuser, who was saying, look at your body, look, what's wrong with this, pointing out the different things that was wrong with me. That created a lot of shame. That created a lot of feeling like, I guess I'm not good enough, right? So we can subconsciously think we need to punish ourselves further, or that we are inherently not good, so we don't deserve to take care of ourselves, right? So when we don't process, when we don't express, when we don't talk about this, when we don't talk through our trauma, our psyches will find out a way to play out that trauma over and over and over again, and in an effort to heal it, right? I truly believe these things come to the surface so that we can heal them. So we may be punishing ourselves through a disordered eating pattern or through body image or negative self-talk so that we can heal it. And so one of those ways that we continue to bring that trauma up and replay the trauma over and over again is through thoughts or actions that actually harm our bodies, right? So this is really deep. It's really like back in the processing and the workings of what's going on in our minds. But I hope that kind of brings maybe some clarity as to why, because I think what starts to happen sometimes as we go through our healing process is we just think we put an end to the digging, right? We say, I just have this eating disorder. It almost becomes like a label, or this is how I deal with my trauma. But if we don't go back inside and say, why? Like, why is this? Why am I re-traumatizing myself, right? For lack of a better term, why am I re-traumatizing myself when it comes to this? Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the energetics of trauma as well, because it's important when we get into the next part, which is the healing part of this. So there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't read it, you should read it if this speaks to you. There's another one called, I think it's The Energetics of Healing. I have it on the resources sheet for those of you who are curious. But basically, trauma is stored energetically. So in my practice, I believe that we have 4 bodies. And you might be like, what do you mean we have 4 bodies? We have 1 body. I'm right here. Yes, we have our physical body. And then we have our mental body. That's our thoughts, what's going on in our head, logic. Then we have our emotional body, which is our emotions, our feelings. And then we have our spiritual body, which is the part of ourselves that is, if you're not a spiritual person, you don't have to be. It just means the thing that gives our life meaning. That's our spiritual body. So those bodies, you can think of them as actual things that kind of surround you, right? You can feel someone's vibe when they're super sad. When someone who's super sad walks into the room, you can feel it. You know that they're sad. That's their emotional body, and you're feeling and interacting with it. Same with if someone's really happy, right? If someone walks into a room and they're super happy and cheerful, you can tell that's their emotional body. That's the vibration that they're putting off. So in any of these 4 bodies, if there is stagnation, you will experience dis-ease or disease. So from a physical standpoint, right? If I eat food and I'm having a lot of digestive issues and there's a lot of stagnation, I'm not moving things through. I'm not moving food and digesting food. That's going to create a physical issue, right? So it's the same with emotions. When we have an emotion come up and we don't deal with it, we don't process it, we don't digest it, it will create an emotional dis-ease. It will create disease, right? And so stagnation equals disease in the mind, emotional body, and disease in the physical body. So what this means is that when we are experience trauma of any kind, it puts like an energy imprint onto us. You could think of it like that. If it was physical trauma, then you felt that physical trauma also get stored in the body. So when we experience trauma, it gets stored in our bodies. And if we don't process it, if we don't move it through, it will continue to create dis-ease. So this is something that I just kind of want to plant. I could do an entire 5 webinar series just on this stuff, but just to kind of plant that seed for you guys to understand that even those things may have happened a long time ago, you may still be carrying them around. There might still be this stagnation. And part of the healing process, if you have disordered eating patterns or you're just trying to heal from trauma in general, is processing, is starting to process that stagnated emotion. So what does this all mean for you, right? So it means that disordered eating, body obsession, or low self-esteem is something that you can deal with forever. You might. It's something, and that sounds bad. It sounds like you're going to have to deal with this forever. But it does mean that there were energetic aspects of this that are going to keep continually coming up. And as we heal, that's something that we just want to be aware of, that there's different layers of this. There's different layers of stagnation, and that's not to make this sound harder than it is or discouraging. It's just that it's there and you can do it. So it also means that there are so many more tools, practices to disrupt, dislodge, stuck trauma energy and PTSD than you may have already been exposed to. So I think so many people go through trauma and feel like, maybe their only option is therapy, or their only option is, medication, if they're depressed or anxious. There's so many more options, especially when we start to look at trauma in this way, that it's something that's just stagnated energy in the body that we need to dislodge and process, okay? And it also means that you are completely capable of remembering your innate worth. So here are some seeds of love and truth to plant in our minds today. Oops. Okay. The difference between blame, fault, and responsibility. Okay, so a survivor is never responsible for an assault or emotional abuse that's happened to them. Never, never, never responsible for that. The fault is always on the person who committed the abuse. No questions asked. That is their fault. However, as an individual, we can always take the responsibility for how we move forward and how we respond. Okay, and I know this is always one of those things that if you're not ready to hear it, you're not ready to hear it. And that's totally okay. Okay. This is meant to help heal. It's not meant to trigger you in any way. So if you're not at that spot where you're like, okay, I'm ready to move forward, I'm ready to take responsibility for myself and my own healing, then that's totally okay. You don't have to, okay, if you're not ready. But assigning blame to the perpetrator, blame for our issues, blame for our reactions, blame for our current issues is never a good strategy. It just ties a weight to you. Blame is really something that you hold on to. So it locks us in place as the victim, and we are survivors, and we will move forward stronger and more compassionate. So we want to make sure that we understand this difference between blame, fault, and responsibility, because all of these things matter when we're trying to heal from disordered eating and body image issues, because we have to start giving ourselves, we have to take our power back. We have to take our own innate worthiness back. And we don't do that until we start taking actually empowered responsibility around our own healing. The next nugget, the gold and the mud, I call this. So you at your core, and this comes from a spiritual place. And I think anyone I've talked to that's been through any sort of deep traumatic thing has come to some spiritual belief. And you definitely don't have to. I'm not saying you have to at all. But for me, it's the only thing that gets me through, that gives this whole thing meaning for me. Okay. So the gold in the mud. So if you look at most spiritual traditions in the world, if you really study what the people the mystics and the originators of these religions and spiritual practices say, they focus on our innate goodness. They talk about at our core, we are good, we are lovable, we are loving, we are loved forever. We are pure gold. We are pure gold internally. And this is something that I can't stress enough and is hard to explain, I think. But this is the thing that is so healing when you've struggled with disordered eating and you've struggled with body image issues and you've struggled with that self-loathing, to let yourself believe that you are gold inside, that you are good, that you are really good, that there is an innate core of goodness to you. That's a great place to jump off from. And that's where we want to keep putting our focus. We want to keep putting our focus into the fact that I have a core of innate goodness. So you are pure gold. The stuff that happens to us, the stories, the mistakes, the failures, these are all the mud. And just like mud on a piece of gold, it doesn't change the gold. So there's this key to healing, especially these worthiness type imbalances, is to clear the mud away, to remove yourself from the story, to see who you truly are underneath, which is that pure innate goodness. So keep moving towards things that make you feel good, right? That make you recognize your goodness. And I'm going to give you some practices for that, of course. But I love this meme. If you're on Instagram Live, you won't see it, but there's this great picture of this little girl it says, remember her? She's still there inside you waiting. Let's go get her. I remember when I first started delving into the box that I had packed away, that was my experience. I remember getting to have that 13-year-old Clara back again. And I could cry, but it was so beautiful to be able to tap into me back then, that pure innate goodness that mud was definitely thrown all over and caked on for years and years and years. But to come back to that person I was, that pure goodness, and because she was packed away in that box with all that ugliness. So I had to clear away the mud. I had to clear away the stories so that I could see her and be with her again. And so I don't know what your story is, but it's a beautiful thing to remember and to be with that inner child that may have been super hurt. Okay, forgiveness is key. I think this might be controversial. And again, I just really want to stress that if you're not ready for this, that's okay. Like, I'm not saying like you need to actively get behind this idea. However, I do want to point out a few things that people don't quite understand about forgiveness, I think, sometimes. So forgiveness is a blessing for you. It means you don't have to carry this around with you anymore. It does not condone the action. It does not say that what happened to you is okay. It does not say that the person that did something to you was right in any way, shape, or form. It sets you free. It sets you free. It sets you free. It doesn't set them free. You holding blame for them weighs you down. It's you holding a weight. So forgiveness doesn't mean you stay silent about injustice. It doesn't mean that you are condoning any action any abuse that was given to you. It means you let go of holding that. It means you forgive. It means you are operating out of love, not fear, right? And I get that is not an easy thing to do. Trust me, this has taken me years. But I also want to point out that forgiveness actually requires very little. It's just the desire to be free and the slightest willingness to see that forgiveness can give you that freedom. That's it. Forgiveness isn't something we have to figure out. It's not something we have to work for. It's not something we have to accomplish. It's actually a letting go. So that is something that I've seen be huge for people healing from specifically disordered eating, because when we let that go, then we don't have to repunish ourselves, right? Then the healing is complete almost. So then that reason that we've been re-traumatizing ourselves so that we can get the healing, we get the healing because we let it go. We can let ourselves become a new person in a way. We can let ourselves be free of that story. We can see the gold under the mud. The blame is the mud. Okay. So another thing I want to touch on that I always talk about is our bodies are doing their best always. So there's a great poem by Mary Oliver called Wild Geese. I have just part of it written here on the slides, and it says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." Again, our bodies are doing their best always. They are the houses for, this trauma. They are holding that energetic trauma. So we need to process that. We need to help them through that. And we need to recognize that they show up for us every single day, and to shift our focus from what's wrong with them, what we would like to see change, to just letting them love what they love. And it's this idea of, it's not so much, our bodies are like an animal, right? I truly believe that, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, as they say. So this body, is mine, is precious, but it's also like an animal in the world, right? So if, I have a dog, so if I were, stepping on my dog's foot and he whined, I would get off of his foot. I would say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. So when our body is hungry, when our body is in pain, when our body is telling us it's tired, that's like stepping on the foot of a dog and just doing it anyway, even though it's yelping. Our body is constantly talking to us. And in the disordered eating realm, in the body image realm, we have kind of stopped listening to our bodies. We've said, I'm not going to feel hunger. I'm gonna have all these strategies around how to not eat and not feel hungry. And so we've actually quintessentially practiced not listening to our bodies. So part of the healing process is to listen to your body again, is to start to listen. And that's going to look messy at first. It's like learning a new language, right? It's like, luckily it's like remembering a language, because you know how to listen to your body. You always have, but you have to remember again. So just remember, like, coming back to this truth was something that really, really helped me, and I know helps my clients, is that our bodies are always doing their best, always. All right. Okay, guys. So we're getting into the top four holistic tools. I'll just go into number one, coaching and therapy, of course. So talk through process with a professional, get more personalized support. This is going to make you be proactive about your own healing. It's going to help you process all that stagnated emotion. And honestly, it's just so good to not feel isolated and alone and share your story. And that's what We Are Her is all about, is that, it's about sharing your story. It's about processing. It's about putting it out there, not feeling so alone. So that's the same thing that happens with coaching. Tool number two is medicinal grade essential oils. So I could also do an entire class about this, but they are vibrational healers. So like I talked about with the energy and the trauma of vibration, the vibration or the stagnation, they actually are one way to help dislodge stagnated emotions and trauma and shift body confidence without talk therapy. I mean, ideally you use all of these tools, but it is something I've seen really work if you're super, you don't want to talk about things, or you're not at a point where you want to like process it with someone through words. You can have the supportive tools of essential oils, which are vibrational healers. They're also supportive of all four bodies. So they're supportive of the physical body. They're supportive of the mental body. They help us anchor, slow down our thoughts. They're supportive of the emotional body. They support positive feelings. You can't smell wild orange essential oil and feel sad. It's like impossible. And they also support us spiritually as well through prayer and anchoring and getting us into a meditative state. So Emotional Healing with Essential Oils is a book that you should get if you're into this. There's a picture of it on the slide here. And I am offering personalized oils consults. So you can email me at revolutionaryhelpdesk@gmail.com. If you do want to buy any oils from me, then I will donate all the proceeds of those oils to We Are Her, of course. So if you want more info on this, I have a lot, and it's definitely a huge passion of mine. And it's something that's helped me tremendously to really put into practice that self-care and make new neural pathways and that kind of stuff. Tool number 3 is mindfulness. Learning to be with yourself, learning to, create space for your mind to do, I think we get confused about meditation and mindfulness a lot. I always hear people say, well, I can't slow down my mind. I can't meditate. Meditation is not about slowing down your mind. It's about watching your mind. So anyone can meditate. Your mind can be going super fast, super frantic. You can actually be meditating at any time. It's watching your thoughts. It's just being an observer and kind of dissociating a little bit and saying, I'm thinking about this. And yeah, then you might fall back into being in it, and then you can come back out and watch, and then fall back into, and then come back out and watch. That's all mindfulness is. So I always say freedom is the space between the stimulus or the trigger and the response. And mindfulness increases that space. So if we're dealing with disordered eating or body image issues or food obsession, we probably have a lot of patterned thoughts that immediately go to more dieting, more restriction, or more binging, purging, whatever. we have these triggers, right? That could be looking at our thighs. It could be seeing cookies on the counter. It could be stress. It could just be high levels of stress. And so when we create more space between the stimulus and the response, we get more space to choose, right? And the research out there on mindfulness is just incredible on how it helps us to soothe depression, anxiety, triggers, and listen to your inner being, like building up that ability to listen to our bodies again. That's something that comes with lots of mindfulness. It helps build confidence and self-esteem. It is a practice. So it's something that you practice. You don't just like do once in a great while and it has all this effect. It's something that you consistently do. And then it redirects and reforms new neural pathways. So that is healing right there. When we have PTSD or something that just, continually is a trigger for us, or we just have a pattern around that's really hard to break, it's because we have a really strong neural pathway around it. So the thoughts can go down that pathway fast. So we need to redirect those, rebuild those, and that's what mindfulness does. Tool number 4 is healing movement and getting back into our bodies. So our bodies may have been a place of torture we wanted to escape from, and this is why we may have used disordered eating, drugs, alcohol, things to numb us. But to move in a way that feels good and opens up can help us to process emotions, dislodge trauma and energy. And the more we stay in our bodies, the more we dissolve and release old patterns, pain, and belief. So as we stay in our bodies and we do movement, so this could even be yoga, this could be dance, this could just be like rolling around on the ground if you wanted to do it that way. That really helps dislodge that pent up or stagnated energy. And a lot of times, especially in the body image and disordered eating world, we're like out of our bodies all the time. So we need to get back in them. We need to feel good in our body again. So somatic therapy, just putting some music on in your room and dance. I'll do this all the time. If I'm feeling super triggered or whatever, I'll just dance. I give myself 3 songs and it will change your entire mood. It really will. You just fake it till you make it kind of thing. Okay, so 3 things to do right now to stop the body hate. Number 1, curate your social media feeds. So unfollow, unfriend any person or account that triggers body shame or makes you feel bad about yourself in any way, shape, or form. Be ruthless. Be super ruthless, okay? It doesn't, like, social media is not real life. Doesn't mean that you're not friends with that person if they're like a friend or something, but it does mean that you're taking your power back. You're taking responsibility for how you move forward. You become that empowered woman and you say, no, the second any account triggers me, I'm taking that off, right? That whole fitspiration thing is not something you need when you're dealing with disordered eating, okay? So consider getting off social media completely if this is one that you find yourself numbing out to a lot, because this can be an addiction, right? It can be a way that we numb ourselves. So consider getting off social media completely for a set amount of time. I was just talking with a friend. She's doing 30 days for the whole month of March. She's not going to be on social media. So maybe you could do something like that. Follow friends or people who inspire you, make you feel good about yourself, and write things that encourage body love and self-love. So find the people out there on Instagram, on social media, with blogs, podcasts. I have tons of them listed in the resources page I created. So follow those people. Okay, inundate yourself with body love, empowering other women on similar journeys as you that inspire you. So again, following people that resonate. Be quick to unfollow, unfriend. Always take 1 day off social media per week to connect with real life. I think sometimes it actually makes us feel more isolated and more comparing of ourselves if we are on it all the time. Give yourself parameters around social media screen time during the day. So I know this is a lot about social media, but I think it's something that's huge and that really affects a lot of people, especially if they're in that space where they want to heal, but they're not healing. That is a big contributor to keeping that kind of self-negative comparing feeling. So That's number one. Number two, write yourself a love letter each day for 30 days. So this is an awesome, awesome practice. Just try it. When we write ourselves love letters, it's as if we're someone who loves us. We start to focus on what we love about ourselves. And this is something that actually really, really matters. It's all perspective, right? So when we start to focus on, when we just even think to ourselves, we get out a piece of paper and we write, "Dear Clara, I love how you," and we have to use our minds to think about what we love. That makes us focus on that. And if we do that consistently, we'll start to notice those qualities in ourselves and we'll start to build that self-love. So write to yourself in third person, e.g., I would write, "Dear Clara." If you really feel like you can't do that, just act as if you were like your mom or someone that you know loves you, writing out this love letter. Forgiveness practice. So number three is a forgiveness practice that I actually got from my therapist. And so it's anytime you notice yourself speaking unkindly to yourself. So if you notice you're looking in the mirror and you're thinking about how you wish your stomach was flatter, or how you wish your nose was different, or how you wish whatever, then you notice that you're saying it and you repeat this. I judge you not, stomach. I forgive myself for what I have created with my judgment. I embrace you, stomach. I love you, stomach. I free you, stomach, to be as you are. So you have to memorize that. And it's in the resources sheet, but it's a powerful practice and you might end up saying it, hundreds of times a day. I know when I started, that's what I was doing, definitely just constantly repeating this to myself. So I judge you not, stomach. I forgive myself for what I have created with my judgment. I embrace you. I love you. I free you, stomach, to be as you are. And it doesn't mean you have to believe it. It just means you start saying it and it starts to build up. Bonus thing you can do right now is download my self-love meditation and do it for 14 days in a row. So I have a free self-love meditation on my website. It's clarawisner.com/self-love-meditation. You can just go to my website and it'll come up. Do this short guided meditation. I think it's less than 10 minutes for 7 days in a row, and you will experience more self-love. Okay, so that's my spiel for you guys. I hope that it was inspiring. It left you feeling good and hopeful. You can find me on Instagram, of course, at Revolutionary Lifestyle, on the podcast app, the Love Rising Podcasts, on the web at revolutionarylifestyle.com, on Facebook, Revolutionary Lifestyle, and the newsletter sign up. I write a blog and / newsletter every week, and they're all about self-love and worthiness. I never sell you anything. I never spam you. It's only a weekly newsletter about whatever's kind of going on in my mind and a new perspective that I have. Okay, so I am going to end the recording and then I'll take some questions if there are any. How do I do that? Stop recording. Okay, bye Instagram. Thanks for watching. I'm going to end that. Okay. All right. Thank you. I will email the PowerPoint, yes, if you want me to. Mariah, maybe you can email me at revolutionary help desk at gmail.com, and I can email you the PowerPoint. So if you want that, but just let me know because I don't want to email it to everybody. Any other questions on here? I'm going to stop the live stream on Facebook. Bye, Facebook. Thanks for watching.